So, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today. And what I had hoped to talk to you about, and maybe we'll kick it off with some scary stuff, but the threats and challenges for those of you who are thinking about going into e-commerce. And I actually think the digital world is extremely difficult to do business. We had this fantastic idea about the internet being so free and all these possibilities. And more and more we're finding that it's kind of feeding the winners and starving the losers. It's turning into a winner-take-all game. So I'm going to share with you some of the data that I'm doing, that I'm researching as part of a PhD in Internet economics. And so I hope that it'll give you some things to think about, and I'd love to get challenges as we go along and hear your perspective. So one of the things that, I moved to Denmark about 2 years ago. I had our company in USA, Coremetrics, it was bought by IBM, and was retail software, so I worked a lot with the retail industry. And I wanted to come to Denmark to be one of the world's happiest people. I know you had a great quality of life and wonderful, so many great things, so I really wanted to experience that. And everyone said to me, oh, college students, university students, they question authority. They really, when you go to educational system in Denmark, they are so strong. They're going against the teachers. And I found out that you actually call your teachers by the first name and your doctors by the first name. It's never have done, couldn't dream of doing that in the U.S. because it's very much a hierarchy. You have to learn to, doctor and so and so. So I thought, oh, that's cool. I think that that's really about the egalitarian society and everyone's equal and no one gets special status. So as I've been doing this data about global platforms and so on, I said, I find it strange because it seems to me that why don't the Danes question technology in the digital world like they question their own teachers, like they question their society? So this is a picture I'd like to show you. And I will need to turn the screen. Okay, so do you see the scales? Okay, so what this is data from FDEM, and what it shows is where Danes spend their time on the internet. Now we know around the world today, Google and Facebook, YouTube, they're the world's most visited websites. But this is showing you that Danes spend more time on Google, Facebook, and Yahoo than the top 20 Danish websites combined. And the trend is only going more in that direction. And the issues about this, what I would, what you can say is this is what users want to do. We go where we want to go. We look at what we want to look at. No problem. Fine. The question that I'm raising is, when we look at how these websites are funded, all the websites in this picture, they get their money primarily from advertising. When you buy advertisement on Clack or TV2 or newspaper here in Denmark or something like that, those companies pay taxes here. You pay a tax on your purchase. Those employees work in here. When you buy advertising on Google, Facebook, YouTube, those companies don't pay tax here. So as we're seeing more and more of the trends concentrating at just a few players that really have no responsibilities or in Denmark or other countries for that matter, what does it say about the governance? What does it say about how this is divided in the world? So I'm going to show you this picture from another perspective. This is how we can think about the world of the digital world as a road. You want to go to a website. You want to come to KEA's website or go to Google's website. You need to get there somehow. And has anybody heard this term, network neutrality? Have you heard? You haven't heard of it? Some people have heard of it. Okay. So this is something that Google talks about, is that all content is equal, and all content should have equal weight on the internet. So versus what you have on the telecom industry says, well, if users want to pay to have more bandwidth or so on, then maybe they can drive on the faster road. They want to download more things. Google doesn't necessarily want that because they want all of their properties and content to go at the same speeds. So what people want, of course, is road number one, the fast track, right? If everything is equal, there's no way to prioritize, or we don't make any investments, we'll be living with lane number two, the big blockage. But the reality today is we live in kind of lane in the middle lane, in lane number two. So the question is, if we want to go to a world where we have this what's called 4G, really fast tech, we want to download movies, we want to upload our own videos and do that, we need to either build better cars or make a bigger road. And the question is, who should pay for that? So let me show you how it's done in Denmark today. I've got this data from the Finansministeriet, and you can see the blue column and the two large columns. There's the red column and the blue column. And that red column is what Denmark, the kommuner, and the state pay for roads you drive in your car, your bicycle lanes, and so on. It's about 8 billion crowns, quite a lot. It's just about equal to what the telecom industry invests in the digital infrastructure. And that they don't get any tax funds. That's paid out of private funds. Of course, all of us are customers. They pay it out of their profits. And the middle two columns are health and the railroads. So Denmark is actually a unique and unusual country where the private sector does the investment into the digital infrastructure. And Denmark has some of the world's best. We're always at the top being rated in terms of good infrastructure for digital communications. So the challenge is coming about today where the global players are disrupting business model. And for better or worse, does anybody here SMS and Facebook? Can anyone raise your hand if anyone SMS and Facebook? I do as well. The SMS traffic from the mobile operators has declined 20% in the last quarter, and that makes up 15% of their revenue. So because we're finding new ways to conduct ourselves online, WhatsApp and so on, that the source of revenue to telecom operators is declining. At the same time, when we want more from them in terms of service and speed, and of course more content. So we have this kind of maybe train wreck coming that their profits are declining. We expect more of them. Then the websites don't want to pay. There's less tax revenue. So there's a lot of issues that are coming together. So what I would say here is, I call this, there's the tax-free club and the taxpayers club, and it's actually not something I'm proud about as an American, but something that's perfectly legal. You can be like Oracle, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Google. They set up their operations in Ireland and can invoice from Ireland. They never have to pay tax in Denmark. It's perfectly legal. A lot of companies do it, and they've saved $3 billion in the last 3 years, not even paying taxes in the U.S. on this. So the question then becomes, how do we provide for this wonderful society that we have in Denmark? How would you pay for universities, the SU that you get, the healthcare, all of those things, if increasingly the tax base will go away because of disruptive technology? So what I would put this to say, when you think about those companies who are Danish and are paying taxes here, what does it mean for them? In a very negative way, we call it the suckers club, right? The taxpayers is the people who have to be here and pay tax. So it just begs the question around, how would we do this fairly, and how do we pay for it? I know today is about e-commerce, and e-commerce is very exciting. It's very stimulating. There's a lot of things going on. It's an industry that didn't even exist 15 years ago. Lots of people, just as yourselves, you're studying today, how can I work in this industry? Does anybody have any idea about how big it is? How many billion crowns a year conducted in e-commerce? It's about 40 billion crowns a year for 5 million people. It's actually, Denmark is a very digitized nation. We buy a lot online. We have a lot of digital advertising for just 5 million people. 50% of every transaction of e-commerce in Denmark will be mediated in some way by Google, whether it's a search for a price, it's a search for a product, search for a different kind of company. So if you think about that, every time you're shopping, somehow or another, you're going through the turnstile of Google. And so what does that say about how much control that they have and who will they answer to? One more question. Does anybody know what people buy most in Denmark online? Yes! Very good. And clothes, shoes and clothes. But what has the highest average order value? It's not shoes and clothes, even though that's what people buy most. Most of the amount, maybe people spend 500 crowns or 100 crowns, but a little bit more than that. Travel is what the highest average order value. So about 3,400 crowns is the average transaction in e-commerce. Just one more trivia. Does anyone buy e-takeaway online? Anyone buy food online? Okay, average price is about 88 crowns. So that's something, keep in mind those sort of numbers, because if you're working in that kind of company, you need to think about how much do I need to make online to make a profitable sale, what returns to the company, and so on. But let's go back here to this big area of toys and shoes, consumer products, things like that. We all shop online. It's fantastic. We can check prices. We have transparency as users. We find these things out. But what is going on with Google and how we shop, and how is that changing? Has anybody heard of Google Shopping? Google product engine? I'm giving you an example of when I search in Denmark on Google DK, I can put in a very common product like a Barnevogn, or I could look at shoes, but I'm going to use this example of a stroller. And you can see at the top of the page I will get some Danish advertising to buy Barnevogn. And then the next two lines it will say search by brand and search by retailer. So what Google is becoming more and more smart about how they show you this information. So what you see it's not random. It's extremely dedicated to you and your shopping habits, and also to those kinds of brands and retailers who can work well with Google. They have the scale, they have the business models that work in a digital world. So this whole idea about starting a web shop and having an interesting product and all of a sudden you're going to get traffic through Google, that dream is over. It's never been there. For a short time when Google started, but it's not like that today. Google wants to work with high-quality merchants who have very strong policies in customer service, that have adhered to sort of strict rules, and it really favors the large companies who can operate on a kind of scale. So what you're seeing now when you use Google for looking at products is they take the product information directly off the website, or they allow the retailers and the brands to upload their products into what's called Google's Merchant Center. So what you see are actually pictures. And I put this to you because I know a lot of people are studying user experience and things like that we put a lot of energy to making websites, and now Google is cutting out that process altogether. It's not even letting the user find the website. It's just taking the information, putting it directly on the search result. So all that stuff you're trying to do to make a beautiful experience, take care of the customer, they don't see that at all. They're just going to see this, as they are today, see a search page with the product and the price. And if you don't have a business that can compete with that, you don't have a business online. So I'd say it's extremely competitive. Again, this is now a picture. When I click on one of those images, I get my product that is written by, the name, the price, the retailer, customer reviews, that also appears. But this kind of operating at this level demands a huge amount of focus and resources from the part of the retailer. And if you'd say, you look here in Denmark, we have, maybe just a few companies who specialize in electronics, and there's a few big players, that will consolidate even more. Because the pressure to perform, the margins that it takes to stay in business is very difficult. Here is what Merchant Center looks like. You can go into Google, ask for Google Shopping. You can set up an account. It's free. You simply upload your products. You put an Excel spreadsheet or number spreadsheet if you're a Mac user with your product name, the SKU, so forth and so on. It gets uploaded to Google. So they don't need your website. They can just use your product information like that. The price is there. And then think about you as a user what you search for, the kinds of shoes you look for. If we know the level of customer profiling. If I'm searching for a Barnavone, do I have kids? Does she buy things related to that? I will start getting advertising on that kind of stuff. So what you can see is every single time you use Google, it's teaching Google to what they think you're about and what you want to shop with. So on the one hand, you can be extremely impressed by how intelligent it is and how exactly it's targeted to advertise to you and to help you shop. On the other hand, you think about, is that the way that you want to experience information on the web? Let's talk just a second about Amazon. Also an extremely impressive company I have a lot of respect for. Of course, I shop there as well. 9 billion crowns, a little bit less than 10% of all transactions in Denmark are done on websites outside of Denmark. So again, we're bringing up this issue about what is Danish, where does the tax money come from, why bother buying here if I can travel to another country that has cheaper prices, it pays for my trip, I shop, I bring it back, or I shop on Amazon. So this is what you see when you go to Amazon, and it says, oh, you're in Denmark, shop on amazon.co.uk. So Amazon is another thing that has changed the world of retail and e-handle, because companies who can't maintain stores, they decide to just shop on Amazon. Of course, Amazon has its own business where they sell products and so on. Extremely competitive, gives customers very low prices. This is the stock price of Barnes & Noble in the US over the last few years. It was the first super bookstore, if you will. And at the same time, this is the stock price of Amazon. So what Amazon has done is kind of the mirror image of what a lot of retailers have gone out of business, and the other time the business has gone online. So I would say to you, what's going to happen to the book industry here in Denmark? Will we have all these bookstores 5 or 10 years from now? Will there be one bookstore? Will we buy all of our books online? Will we read our books? Right? So this process is happening here too, not just in books, but in electronics and clothes and all other areas. One more thing I'll point out to you. Amazon is not just a retailer, just an e-commerce company. They sell cloud services and they also sell web store. So why build your own website when you could just rent it from Amazon? You can take their technology and put it on your own website. So what does that mean about all these things to do to build up a website? I can just get Amazon technology. Now, it's not free. It's a competitive price. But it's interesting to think about what is the kind of world where we can have so-called world's best class technology every time we shop. What does that mean about how and who decides what goes on the web and how we shop? I'm going to just make one note about Facebook because it seems like we can't stop talking about Facebook. It's very interesting in Facebook because people spend an enormous amount of time there, 800 million users, a company about to go public. This is, Best Buy is, largest electronics retailer in the U.S., has 180,000 employees. They completely put their entire store, they put their whole product catalog on Facebook, but it has not helped their profitability. The 2 years they've had terrible results. And I keep looking for the example of social media adding to the bottom line of companies, and I still can't find it. But at the same time, we can't not do it, right? We're losers if we don't, we're not having a conversation. So this is extremely difficult for companies. And it's something that the industry is grappling with, trying to find ways to justify what's the role of Facebook in my e-commerce strategy. Okay, and so I don't know if you've seen this picture. I want to come back to this idea about how you're questioning authority. And I know that this demographic is Apple's favorite. And I always love this picture because it's, of course, a bit of the irony. So, but I would say thank you so much for the chance to speak with you today. And I hope that you can be more critical about your digital technology going forward. And I will close with one thought, that in the 1950s, Rådhuspladsen in Copenhagen was a parking lot. This is where people parked the cars. And they saw what was happening in the US, it was turning into a big car country, and the mayor and the people at that time said, that's not what we want here in Denmark. So they had a conversation about what should the future look like. Do we want bicycles? Do we want public transportation? How do we want this world to be? So I would say, how do we want the web to be? It should be a conversation that we're all part of today. And I hope that could go on in the universities and in these places of learning, regardless of which devices we use.